Echoes of blood, the strange and unsolved Hinterkaifeck farm murders. In the quiet countryside of Bavaria, Germany, stood a small and lonely farmhouse known as Hinterkaifeck. It was not far from the town of Gruber, but far enough that the family who lived there were mostly isolated. The year was 1922, and the family living in this farmhouse was the Gruber family. Andreas Gruber, the father, was 75 years old. His wife, Cecilia, was 72. They lived there with their widowed daughter, Victoria Gabriel, and her two young children, Cecilia, who was just 7, and Josef, only 2 years old. With them also lived a maid who helped with the daily work. On the outside, they looked like an ordinary farm family, but soon their home would become the stage of one of the most chilling and unsolved crimes in history. In late March 1922, something strange started happening on the farm. Andreas Gruber noticed unusual things. One day he found footprints in the snow leading from the forest to the farmhouse. But what was even stranger was that the footprints did not lead back into the forest. Whoever made them had walked to the house but not away from it. This worried him, but he did not report it to the police. Instead, he told neighbors about his suspicion. Around the same time, Andreas also said that he heard noises in the attic at night. It sounded like someone was walking up there, but when he checked, he found no one. The family also noticed keys disappearing, and one day Andreas found a newspaper in the house that no one in the family had bought. Something was clearly wrong, but the Grubers stayed in the house, trying to continue life as normal. The farmhouse itself was old and isolated, surrounded by fields and woods. It was the kind of place that would already feel eerie at night. Yet the Grubers carried on with their work. But then, another strange event occurred. Their maid, who had been working for them for a long time, suddenly left her job. She told people she felt the house was haunted. She had heard strange sounds and felt an unsettling presence. Her departure left the family without help, but a new maid soon arrived. Her name was Maria Baumgartner, and she started her job on March 31st, 1922. Sadly, that very night would also be her last. On the evening of March 31st, unknown killers entered the Hinterkaifeck farm. The crime they committed was brutal and shocking. Andreas Gruber, his wife, his daughter Victoria, and young granddaughter Cecilia were lured into the barn one after another, where they were murdered with a pickaxe-like tool called a mattock. Their bodies were later found stacked on top of each other, covered with hay. Inside the house, the killers also murdered the maid Maria, who had only arrived that day, and little Joseph, the baby. Boy, the entire family, along with their maid, was wiped out in a single night. The next day, neighbors noticed that something was wrong. The family did not show up at church, which was unusual for them. Victoria and her children were very active in the local community, and their absence was quickly noticed. Over the next few days, people also saw that the farm was strangely quiet. The postman delivered letters, but no one collected them. Finally, neighbors decided to check the farm on April 4th. When they entered, they found the horrifying scene. The barn was filled with the stench of death, and under piles of hay lay the bodies of Andreas, his wife, Victoria, and little Cecilia. Inside the house, they discovered Maria in her room and Josef in his crib, both brutally murdered. The horror of the killings was made worse by something even stranger. It appeared that the killer, or killers, had stayed on the farm after committing the murders. Food had been eaten from the kitchen, animals had been fed, and cows were still milked. Smoke had been seen rising from the chimney in the days after the murders, meaning someone was living in the house while the victims lay dead. This detail made the crime even more terrifying, as it suggested the murderer was comfortable enough to remain at the scene for days, right under the noses of the neighbors. The police began their investigation immediately, but they were shocked by how little evidence there was. They searched the farmhouse, but nothing seemed to be stolen. Money and valuables were left behind. This suggested that robbery was not the motive. They questioned neighbors and anyone connected to the family. They considered several suspects. Some believed the crime was committed by a stranger passing through the area. Others suspected people close to the family. One theory was that Victoria's late husband's family might have had a conflict with her. Another theory suggested that Joseph, the baby, might not have been the child of Victoria's late husband at all, but instead the child of her own father, Andreas. There were rumors that Andreas and Victoria had an incestuous relationship, and that this had caused tension and anger in the community. Could the crime have been driven by revenge or hatred? Police also suspected Carl Gabriel, Victoria's husband, who had supposedly died in World War I. Some thought he may have faked his death and returned in secret, killing the family in rage. Others suspected neighbors or former workers on the farm. One man, a local named Lorenz Schlittenbauer, became a key suspect. He had once been close to Victoria and was believed to possibly be the father of little Joseph. He knew the family well, and some believed he may have had personal reasons for revenge. However, no evidence ever proved his guilt. The case grew colder as months turned into years. More than 100 suspects were questioned, but no one was ever arrested. Investigators even tried new techniques decades later, re-examining skulls of the victims. These skulls were sent to Munich for study, but sadly, during World War II, they were lost and never recovered. Without them, modern forensic methods could not be used to solve the crime. What makes the Hinterkaifeck murders so chilling is not only the brutality of the killings, but also the strange events leading up to them. The mysterious footsteps, the noises in the attic, the missing keys, the newspaper, and the maid who quit out of fear. All of these details point to the idea that someone may have been secretly living in the house before the murders. If that is true, it means the killer was inside the farmhouse, watching and waiting for the right moment. This theory is one of the most terrifying possibilities of the case. The little granddaughter, 7-year-old Cecilia, showed signs of a slow and painful death. When her body was found, she had clumps of her own hair in her hands, as if she had pulled them out in fear or agony. This small detail shows the sheer horror of that night and makes the case even more tragic. To this day, the Hinterkaifeck murders remain unsolved. The farmhouse itself was eventually demolished, and a memorial now stands in its place. The story has become part of true crime history, often compared to horror stories because of its eerie details. Generations later, people are still fascinated by the case, trying to piece together clues and theories. Was it a family member, a jealous lover, a stranger, or someone who had been hiding in the attic? We may never know, but the story of Hinterkaifeck continues to send shivers down the spine because it is not just a murder. Mystery. It is a reminder of how even in the most ordinary-looking places, something unimaginable can happen. The silent farmhouse still whispers its secrets, but no one has been able to understand them. The case remains one of the darkest and most mysterious crimes in Germany's history.